Welcome to Scout Dynamics. I just completed converting a Magpul PMAG 10 to fit on my standard first generation Savage 10 FCM Scout rifle. Simply reloading now, I can convert from traditional to tactical. How this is done will now be demonstrated in several steps. The first step is to measure your standard magazine. For the Model 10 FCM Scout, it is 3.02 inches in length. If you have a different model, Model 10, you're going to have a different magazine dimension. Be sure to measure whatever magazine you have for your rifle. The Magpul P10 comes at 3.06, so you're going to have to shave a few thousandths off the end. The front of the magazine has the extra meat. That's where you're going to want to sand it. Slowly, carefully, and meticulously sand off the end of the magazine. Be careful not to remove too much. Once the magazine fits in the well, you're good enough. 3.03 is sufficient in this particular case. Next, you will insert the magazine and pull it out several times. All the way in, all the way out. The magazine catch will make a mark. It will engrave a mark in the side of the magazine. It will do this in the plastic. As a rule, the magazine catch is perfectly right at the bottom of this ledge. So now you have the mark. Take your Dremel and cut your hole at the bottom of the mark. If you haven't already, disassemble the magazine. With a very fine file, slowly and carefully, file the hole until the magazine catch clicks. File a bit, test on the magazine, test it on file some more. File, test, file until the magazine latch clicks. At this point, without the metal on the side, the magazine will rock a little bit because the magazine, while longer than the standard magazine, is slightly narrower. This does not affect the feeding of the round, but it will affect magazine retention. And the first time I tried this, the magazine fell out because it did not give a positive enough catch on the magazine latch. So, in order to provide a better latching surface and a shim to take up the slop, we now are going to have to make this metal siding piece, this metal shim on the side. The stock magazine is at 0.98 inches wide. The Magpul PMAG 10 is 0.86. By adding the side shim, we're at 0.95. The material we're going to use is 16 gauge sheet metal. Available at your local hardware store. We're going to cut a piece 1 inch by 1.5 inches. You want to make a mark 5/16 from the top, 3/8 at the bottom, 9/16 deep. Using a Dremel with a cutting disc. Round off the corners. Or any other custom shapes you would like. Make it look as pretty as you want. Mix up your JB Weld. Glue it over your hole. Ensure that the top edge does not protrude above this top edge of the magazine. Do not let it get up into the shoulder area. At this point, you want a little excess material here. This is the precision part. It has to be done exactly right, or you'll have to start over again. Set your JB Weld, let it set overnight. At this point, depending on how well you press the JB Weld down, the magazine might now be slightly too thick. I used a flap wheel on my grinder to grind it down. Be very careful. You do not want to go too thin. Also, be careful not to overheat. Make a couple passes, quench. Make a couple passes, quench. Do not let the plate get hot enough to sizzle with water on it. If it does, well, that becomes another story on how to undo a mistake, which we'll cover later. Once the magazine fits smoothly, you're now ready to adjust the catch. Using a jeweler's file, slowly and meticulously file the metal until the magazine catch begins to latch. Once the magazine catch is done, you're there. It might take a little extra effort to seat. You might want to use this magazine a few times and let's see if it wears in before removing any more metal. You may have to ram it home. That's better than having to start over again. So be very careful on how much you file. If you did file too much, what's going to happen is that when you fire the weapon, the magazine will drop. If you did file off too much, the magazine will drop every time you fire the weapon. So part of your bolt cycling process would be wrap, rack, pow. That's not acceptable in the field. So if you do file off too much, you have to start over. How do you un-JB Weld this? I mentioned previously, when sanding it, do not let this get too hot. To undo this, you do the opposite. Using a regular grinding wheel, grind it until the metal begins hot enough to sizzle water. Then, quench. Grind until it starts to sizzle. Quench. If you start smelling burnt JB Weld, stop and quench. Repeat the process until a warp develops. As the metal gets hot and cold and becomes thinner, it will warp. At that point, you would simply be able to pry it off. Sometimes the metal will actually fall off on a quench. Sand off the old JB Weld, make a new part, try again. The end result, my rifle can go from purist traditional to tactical / tactard with a simple reload. Let's go to the range and see how all this works. Alright, let's see if this magazine modification works. Hope you enjoyed watching. Like and subscribe. See you at the range.